Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Vision Straight Masterclass series. I'm Obi Malope, an optometrist and business leader and eye care leader, I believe, based here in South Africa. 2018, I got the awesome privilege of attending eye care in Glasgow. And when I was there, I kept on hearing this name, Ian Cameron, and everyone was talking about this big, massive personality there was this presence that people were constantly referring to this name, Ian Cameron, and the Vision Straight CPD platform actually comes from the UK, Scotland. So we work with IK in the United Kingdom, and a lot of those CPD platform courses have got this name, Ian Cameron. And about a week later, I had the awesome privilege of meeting Ian in 100% optical conference, and oh my, the humility, how easy it is to approach this gentleman that's sitting in front of me right now. I was like, we cannot have a masterclass series without talking to Ian Cameron, because I've seen the work that he does. A lot of people in the world know the work that he does, but I don't think they really know who is Ian Cameron. And so today, my wonderful colleagues in the IK community, I'm introducing you to this humble leader, Mr. Ian. How are you, sir?
Thank you, Obi. That is definitely too much. Like, I'm from Britain, from Scotland. We're not used to people heaping praise. We like to play it cool. So I'm not sure I recognize who you're describing there, but thank you very much. It's very kind. It's great to be here. Right?
No, it's easy because I'm just talking the truth. I'm not trying to hype you up. So I think when you just talk about someone who his work and who his character speaks for themselves, I think that's very, very important. A lot of the times, leaders are associated by their work, not by who they are. People don't interact with them based on who they are. They interact with them based on what they have achieved and accomplished. And so with you, it's more about who you are that I get to relate with you so well and so easy. And so who is Ian Cameron? How did you enter the eye care industry? Where are you from? Where are you based? Can you please tell the wonderful community about yourself?
Sure. Edinburgh. I am 39 years old currently, and I've been living in Edinburgh. Well, I've lived in Edinburgh my whole life, except when I went to I did my undergraduate degree, and I grew up around optometry. So my father was an optometrist, a much bigger deal than I am in eye care in Scotland, certainly, and in the UK. He just a couple of years ago got awarded an OBE for UK. I don't know if that means anything to those of you outside the UK, but that's a big deal here. So I've got some big shoes to fill. But he ran a very successful from him. Now, I came back to Edinburgh in 2005, so I studied in Manchester and I worked down there in the eye hospital down in Manchester, some undergraduate refraction, and then I moved back to Edinburgh to take over the business, or to come into the business, and the plan had always been like, I was going to gradually increase the amount I was doing, and he was going to gradually decrease the amount he was doing. But what actually happened, and at that point, my dad just wanted more time to be with my mum, and so he said, "Look, Ian, I just need to retire." And so we had all the gently help me get used to the business and get the hang of things. But in the end, it was a clean break. He retired, and I was thrown in at the deep end, sink or swim for quite a few years. I definitely wasn't ready to run a business that complicated or that established, but eventually got my hands around it. And looking back, I think actually it was the making of me as a businessman and as a leader. since then, the business has been growing, and we now run, or I now run, Cameron Optometry is my practice. It's a big independent practice. We have 6 in one site in city centre Edinburgh, and we've got a big focus on contact lenses. That was always one of our big things. So we're all independent prescribers, which means we can prescribe medication. I'm not sure how that relates to everyone who's watching here, but we're able to prescribe medication in community. We don't need to refer that on, and so all our optometrists have that additional qualification. So we do a lot of pathology, a lot of eye care, and that's the practice that I run, and I absolutely love it. And it's a great privilege to be the boss of that team.
One of the things that you mentioned was that you had big shoes to fill. Now, there's someone who's going to be watching this, and the very first question is, this should not be one of those interviews where a person just is very generic about the responses. What are some of the things that you did or that you went through in equipping yourselves or yourself to become the leader that you now have to become, in order to not only maintain the practice at the level at which it was, but to elevate it to an even higher level? What are some of the practical things that you would say you did, whether it be on the academic side, the clinical side, or the business side of optometry? If you don't mind unpacking that for us, and obviously the challenges that were associated with that process as well.
Yeah, that's a good, man. What did I do? I don't really know. It was, but I can think about it on those areas, as you say. If you split it down, I think first and foremost, of the practice that I took over. It was a big clinical practice, contact lens expertise, eye care expertise. I needed to make sure my clinical skills, I did some training in contact lenses. I took a diploma in contact lens practice so that I had some technical knowledge there. Prescribing so that I could manage the pathology side of things. I spent time working in an eye hospital in amongst while I was in practice. I spent more pathology experience. And so for the first few years, it was really just about getting up to speed and making sure that I could do the clinical work and sort of fill the kind of main thing of the practice. And that's what I had to get right. And then I suppose I think I definitely learned from watching my dad. Like, he'd been a leader in the industry and in the business for many years. So I watched seeing how he led and tried to emulate that as best I could. And then I think as you develop your own leadership and you do things with your own flavor, but at first I would just be emulating good leaders that I looked around me. So good leaders there for me to follow. I had my dad to look at, folks like you and Nick and guys that I know through UOB. Good leadership, just watching them thinking, right, what are these guys doing? Let's make sure I do that across all different industries, not just optics, but all the different industries in my and I guess that was the first part. And then as you get more comfortable, you can start bringing your own expertise into that. And I never any sort of study in that, really. I never did a business degree or anything like that, so I learned on the job. And I suppose that's good and bad. I didn't get time for it in the end, so just had to make do. And I think the thing about leadership for me, people will treat you like a leader. So I was young, coming into this established business with a big reputation. I had a leader, and so it was a chance. I had to sort of fake it till I make it, really. So it was a case of people like I am their leader, and then gradually people start to respond to that. They think, okay, this guy is a leader, and then believing it. So there was definitely a bit of copying what other people do, faking it for a while until I started to get my hang. Gradually, you look back, I think, after a while, and you think, oh man, I actually am a leader here. I don't think you can feel it happening. It's like growth. You don't than I was, and I was more of a leader after a year than I was at the start, and it just happens if you're forced into that. I don't know what is there other aspects to that question you wanted me to tackle there, Lee?
No, I think you actually broke it down very nicely from that academic, clinical, and business side of things. I think that you introduced that element of leadership very, very well. Were there ever times, I mean, we didn't prepare for this, but were there ever times where, because of the shoes that you had to fill in, were there ever times where, especially when you look at years back, where you felt underwhelmed or overwhelmed with the task at hand? In terms
Oh,
because
all the time,
you're
all
dealing
the
with people,
time.
People have got different characters. You've got a big team, from what I've noticed. It's a very, very big team. And so different personalities come into play. And also the dynamics involved with, I've noticed that with your team, you're not necessarily the oldest in the practice. And so other people would be older and others very, very young. So you would be right there in the middle. And there's obviously a bunch of different personalities. How is that building? How have you managed to build a culture, a Cameron optometry culture, in the midst of you learning and developing into the leader that you eventually became and are still developing into? I don't know if you get the question.
I get the question. I don't know. I don't know how to answer it, man. You need to ask somebody who knows about business. I don't know. I mean, I think the things that people always tell you about business are true. So, like, you do learn from your mistakes. So there's so many times that I look back, we communicated something to the staff in the wrong way, or we failed to communicate it, and it led to some friction, or I didn't manage learned by making mistakes, and I still do. I don't get it right all the time. I think I get it right more often than not, but there's always time. And so I'm very much a believer in sort of lifelong learning on these things. So I'm not the finished article there. In terms of developing a culture, I think what I benefit from is working in my business, right? So I only have one practice, and so I can set standards and set cultural expectations in that practice. And I think that's maybe the benefit of a smaller enterprise rather than being spread across lots of different sites. And I know that has advantages as well there, but I can pick every member of staff, I can train every member of staff, I can set carefully because I'm there all the time and setting that culture. So I think it definitely comes from the top. The culture is XYZ, but if you don't act that out, it's not going to stick. So they say things like, vision, culture eats vision for breakfast. Oh, I want my practice to be a really friendly, welcoming place. Well, guess what? If you're not friendly and welcoming, your practice isn't going to be it all you like. But if you don't do it, it's not going to happen. So if you want your practice to be the best clinical practice in your area, best clinician in your area, if you want to be the most, I don't know, you want to be the nicest to your staff, like that's where it starts, and I think that's what creates a culture. And so I would hope that my staff would, what I say and what I do are ultimately the same things. I don't say one thing like, oh, I love my staff and I really want to care for them, and yet I don't actually do. So it's got to be what you say and what you do kind of go together, and I think that's where it starts for me. So I can't expect anything of want them to behave in a certain way, then I'm going to have to behave in that way first, and then people are going to follow in line.
You hit the nail on the head with the hammer, but you highlighted something that it's a very interesting aspect that I would want us to touch base on. You said you work in your business. Now you read a lot of these business books and so forth. They would always be saying work on your business, not in the business. However, I've found that a lot of legacy practices that have been around for decades and have moved from one generation to the next generation, a lot of those businesses are built around the individual. And people come from all over the different parts of the country to go and see that particular business leader for their eye care needs. Now, in your case, you've got what, 4 optometrists within the practice? Or is it just
6?
6. So I guess
6.
So what I wanted to find out is, when do you then take time to work on the business? So is every single day a clinical day, or do you have days where it's not clinical work and it's those days where you've got time for the business? So how do you balance it? How does it work in your case? Because I know with other leaders, for example, they come in maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, or they come in every day and then they skip one day for just purely admin related stuff. So with 6 optometrists with such a big team, I'm obviously believing that you've got multiple departments within the organization that handle different aspects of the business. But in your case, how do you balance the technical aspects where you are testing patients to now having to step aside and focus on other elements of the business in order for it to operate here?
Yeah, it's a good point, and it is impossible if you are never going to develop your business. No chance. So I had an established business that I took over. Established, but there was no way even that kind of business could be developed without me devoting time to working on. Right, there's got to be a balance between them both, and the balance depends on what you want to do with your practice. If you really want to drive it forward, you need to spend more. Don't want to drive it forward that hard, then you can spend more time working in it. For me, it started so quite early on. I think I said, Ian, don't ever work 5 days a week. He always said that. And that was, he was talking there about more work in the week, just to do his own thing in life and in the things that he's passionate about outside of work. And qualified optometry. And so I was in the fortunate position that I wasn't earning very much before I qualified, and then day a week job. And so I never got used to the level of income that comes if you work at your kind of maximum capacity, because it's very difficult to drop. That was what my dad had taught me. So I only ever had a relatively good work-life balance, and I kept that going. Currently, I do between days a week, depending on the week. So at the last couple of weeks, I've only done 2 a week usually, and next couple of weeks I've got 3. Are in and out of the practice. I tend to increase or decrease my time to fill in when other people aren't in the practice. But that leaves me at least to work on the business, admin, development, new ideas, whatever, HR, accounts, blah, blah. You need time for that. And I devote a lot of time to that.
Wow. I wanted to ask you, how has your clinical skills evolved over the years? Obviously, I've noticed that technology keeps on evolving. And the mistake that we make sometimes as business leaders is that we don't have that urgency to develop faster than the technology. So what I've noticed with you, though, is that you sort of like are quick to upgrade yourself. You're quick to enhance your skills. You're quick to, here's the technology. We've been doing it like this for the last 2 to 3 years. It's working. But the minute something new comes in, you are quick to then say, okay, the industry might not be accustomed to this as yet, but I'm going to go and start doing this, so that 2 to 3 years later, when the industry takes a wake-up call and everyone now jumps onto the bandwagon, you're already 2 to 3 years ahead of the curve. I've noticed that type of approach from you. What is the thinking behind that? What's your journey like? What has your journey been like?
Yeah.
On that?
So I think that's partly a culture thing, and the culture of the business was that. That's how my dad always did it. He always had the latest technology. He was always quick, always was upgrading. So as soon as a piece of technology was getting out of date or there was a new version, he'd be right on it. And so that was the sort of culture I inherited. And I just, how you do business, and you keep investing in it, and you keep investing in new technology. And then I think there's an element of personality. Like I love a new challenge. I hate doing the same thing over and over and over again for long periods of time. I like to try new things. I like to try new ways. Here's a better way of doing that thing that you've always done. I'm going to embrace that. I love it. I love doing new things. Love it. So I think that's just a personality. So that's, it allows me to do those kind of things quite easily. If you're inside a small business, you can make changes like that easily. And then the way the business thrives, my business, it's a niche business. We're not a huge practice. We charge high prices for maintain those clinical standards always, and that equipment, that's our unique selling point. So I've got to stay on top of that, so I did those qualifications I talked about quite early in my career, and I've been bringing other optometrists into the practice now, and we're exceeding mine because I hadn't done a further qualification for quite a while. So I was thinking, man, I used to be setting the pace. And now they've exceeded me because we've set that culture that they should be expected to be doing more qualifications, learning new things, trying new things. And I felt like I took on a glaucoma qualification last year, which I just found out yesterday that I passed. Hurrah! Because that would have been a bit difficult if I didn't pass it. But again, just that constant like doing new things. What's the next thing I can learn? What's the next thing I can do? And look, I've got young kids, family life. I'm busy outside of work, but it's a priority for the business because that's how the business has grown over the years. That's what's made it successful, to make it successful as I build it. So it's a function of the culture of the place.
I like that because you highlighting something that I didn't think about, that you're not concerned about being the best. You're concerned about working with the best. Because if the entire team is up here, it means that the service that you're then giving the patient is different from what they will be getting anywhere else. So it means you guys have found a way to elevate.
Exactly.
You've found a way to elevate one another to a different standard, which is perhaps, I guess, above the norm, and it then enhances or elevates the offering that the business then will be able to provide to its patients. So now,
you're exactly right. You're exactly right, and that's a key thing. If you run a personality business, like I'm the big man of Cameron Optometry, and it's all about me, then size of me, no matter, I might have a big ego, but it can only be my size, right? I'm only one guy. I can't do more than I can do. If you want to grow it beyond that, dependent on you, then you need to find ways of raising up other people to do things for you. And so I'm very, very, and letting other people come in. And at times that's costly and slow. It would be more profitable test 5 days a week. If I did 5 days a week of testing, the business would be more profitable. But actually, I've got also to give some patients over to these newer members of staff so that they can be built up. And in time, in the long term, it's not beneficial. And so making that transition can be difficult. It can be hard to say, look, I'm going to take a day off and get somebody else in for that day.
Wow.
About that to begin with, but there's ways of managing that and moving forward.
I love that. I love that. um, your speaking journey, how did that come about? Because you speak at conferences, you get invited to different events, you speak as an expert. You don't speak from the context of promoting a particular company necessarily. You speak based on what is best for the patient, and whether it's this equipment that you are using or that technology that you are embracing in your practice. When you get invited to speak, a lot of people don't actually know the depth or the extent that's involved in carving out a speaking career. How does your speaking journey come about, and are you enjoying it? Because you seem like, that those people that when they stand in front of people and they start speaking, they are detached from the audience. I remember sitting at one event and you were speaking there, and I was like, look at this guy. He was just chilled, but it's as if you spoke. It's as if you spoke with each and every single optometrist on an individual basis, but there was a room full of people. I don't know if you get. I saw that from you. I actually learned that from you, where
that's very kind.
There was a room full of people, but it's as if you integrated the audience into that which you were speaking about, and I found that very, very fascinating, because it was just next level type of. I don't even know if you are aware that's what you are doing. So how did your speaking journey come about, and what's the process involved?
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky. Sure. The son of my dad, quite a big speaker around, certainly in the UK and some international stuff as well, but he was a big name on the list. I benefited from that because when I started doing it, people would give me a chance because they knew who my dad was. So in the door because of who my dad was. But the thing about that, and I don't feel bad about that, because you only get one shot at that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
First shot because of who my dad was, but I don't get a second shot, so I've got to smash it out of the park. So yeah, I got an opportunity, but I guess the thing about public speaking is there's so much technique to it. I don't know if you don't do at it and you think, man, they make it look so easy. Like he just turned up and he's just chatting. Like he's never even, it's just nothing. That is the opposite of what's true. That person who looks like that has put in many, many more hours than the person who's not. That person looks so relaxed and so good is because they know their content inside out. They know what they're talking about. They've carefully thought about what they want to communicating it. And if you've got all those ingredients, then you can give a great talk. I think from my point of view, there's so many talks which are boring with people who are low energy, right? And I made it my mission when I started getting into lecturing, I'm never going to be boring. Energy. So when I'm talking, I'm moving, I'm big, I've lots of energy, I've lots of passion, lots of drive. And that's the way in real life, I guess, I'm doing a lot of movement, but that's how I try and present. I really try and bring a lot of energy. And I think people respond warmly to that. So, yeah. So we could talk about this all day. I guess what you tell me, Obi, what's useful to talk about?
For me,
difficult to know. I don't know. I had a different route into it. But once you get established, then opportunities.
For me, I think it was
opportunities more because of my previous work, not because of who my dad is.
I hear you. For me, it was the patient. For me, it was honestly the patient. I learned at varsity. I'm from South Africa. So in South Africa, we've got 11 official languages. And I learned how to speak, I think, half of them. And I was fortunate enough to come from the central part of South Africa. And we had diverse patients. I come from a place called Bloemfontein. So we had Tswana-speaking patients, Sotho-speaking patients, Afrikaans and English, and a little bit of Xhosa. Then I moved to a place called Johannesburg. And in Johannesburg, there's a lot of Zulu, less Xhosa. And what another language that we call Sepedi. So I discovered when I was still in optometry school that you have got a diverse number of patients that come to the optometry clinic. And one thing that will separate me from all the other students will be when I've got that patient sitting in front of me, communicate in the language of choice. So that was for me what I started doing. I said, learn multiple languages and be able to communicate efficiently and effectively in that language. And I saw how the doctor-patient relationship improved as a result of me being able to communicate with patients of different cultures. So when I started my speaking career, it became easy then to say, Obi, people in the audience are coming from high-end practices, low-end practices, franchise practices, independent practices. Some are Muslim, some are Christian, some are atheists, some are whatever the case may be. I've got different gender preferences. I want, when I'm standing in front of my audience, every single person in the audience to feel that guy's talking about me or that guy is talking to me. So the minute I had that thinking mentality on, I then found a way of making the presentation slides entertaining. And like you said, you have to know your content. So when I make examples, I'll do a browse in the audience to look at who is in the audience and from where they're from. So that when I use an example on what I'm talking about in the presentation, I'm giving an example based on that person, because I know that that person represents 5 other people in the same audience, and I'll do the same with another person and another person. So I would have covered base of everyone in the audience without them even knowing, but I know my content. And that was very, very important, that I don't speak like I'm speaking from a textbook. I'm speaking like someone who has experienced that the same way that that person has experienced it. And that for me was how I went about my speaking journey.
That's right. And I think try and take with me in is thinking public speaking is not about proving how much you know. Okay, so a lot of people enter it thinking, I'm going to show that I know all the technical words and I know all the ins and outs, and I'm going to show it's a chance for me to show that I'm an expert. If you enter it like, don't go into that attitude. But like you're saying there, the point is to think, if I were in the audience, what would I and interesting in this subject? So if I'm talking about using an OCT, I'm not going to talk about superluminescent dye OCTs work, because if I was in the audience, I'd be like, I don't care about how an OCT works. I want to know, how do I find macular degeneration different from something that's not so serious? And how do I, that's what I want to know. And so that's what I take in. So when I get up the front, I'm thinking for the person they want to know. It's not about me showing how clever I am. It's about me serving the audience and saying, like, how can I help you your practice, put it into action? So I'm highly practical, I'm highly accessible, I don't use long words, and I don't try and prove how clever I am.
I like that. I like that. Look,
rest with me when you hear me as a speaker, but you will definitely take away something useful that you can take away into practice.
I love that. I love that. Reputation is a big thing. Trust is a big thing. Integrity is a big thing. You obviously had shoes to fill, but you have to carve out your own path along the way, because you can only ride your father's name for so long, because the people that he used to work with are no longer in those positions from the companies that he used to be working with and the stakeholders and so forth. How easy or how difficult was it in you then building your own brand, building your own trust relationships, carving out your own reputation that is about Ian? What were some of the challenges that you discovered, or was it challenging, if I can put it that way?
Really didn't try to put my stamp on things straight away. Like I think my dad knew what he was doing and he was very good at this. So what I should first try and do is just try and like do kind of initial approach. I think some people maybe want to come in and say like, ditch all that old stuff. I want to do it my way. That's not my approach. Maybe risky. So basically, I just tried to emulate my dad for a while. And as I did that, I developed skills and abilities. By bit, it started to move in a slightly different direction. It's very difficult to say where did my dad end and I begin. I think it was so mirroring my dad, doing everything he did, but bit by bit, he was less important, and I was starting to do my own thing. And now the looking is completely different to what it was like when he was there. But it's been a gradual change to that point, and that's worked well for me.
Wow.
Where did I start doing my own thing? I don't know. It's difficult to know, but bit by bit, gradually, and it happens naturally. They say that's when I started doing something my own way.
Wow, I totally get where you're coming from. Do you think as an industry, how do I put it this way? Do we compete more than we collaborate, or do we collaborate more than we compete? Yeah, I think, I don't know if you get me.
Depends who you are and what bit of the industry you're in. I know for myself, like I'm very much a collaborator. I love learning, trying to serve other people and like build up their businesses. Like I don't need to put other people down for my business to be successful. I just need to do my thing. Succeed. That doesn't mean you can't do your thing really well as well, and I want to help you do that. So, but I definitely know there's people who don't feel are very much in their silo and think I can't afford to kind of lose a patient to the other guy, and I don't know how you change that to do that sort of thing. I don't think you can get away with that anymore. So the kind of lone one-man band thing, I think, is just big companies like Specsavers, for example, they're spending £1 million a week on advertising. £52 million. It's a highly competitive industry, and so independents have to learn from each other, help each other to try and get better apart or working against each other. I think that's not a good call.
Wow, you actually highlighted something very, very interesting, because I think the world over, there is that challenge between independents and the franchise companies. And I think in other parts of the world, we don't build communities around each other as independents so that we can strengthen each other and be able to elevate each other up. Whereas we don't have those big marketing budgets. We don't have those advertising spends that we can see other franchise companies do. Now, what I've seen with Cameron Optometry is that how you went about positioning your brand on social media was not necessarily around Cameron Optometry necessarily, but you went a step further and you then went frame room. So that distinguishing factor, how has that benefited your guys as a business in order for your practice to function at the level at which it does?
Well, I mean, all these different elements of a practice have different marketing needs, right? The message that I'm putting across on social media or in marketing is very different from if I'm talking about frames. The message is very different. The tone of that is very different. And I think if you don't separate those out quite carefully, targeted, you end up doing a kind of middle of the road message to try and appeal to everybody. And I think that's very difficult to do. And so we thought, actually, because games and some style stuff that we wanted to really focus on, it made sense to hive that off of it as a bit of a separate brand and talk about that because it let us communicate in a different way on that topic, yet still be able to communicate in the way we like to about our clinical, both of those properly, except by separating them out a bit. And so that's the kind of approach there.
That's actually inspiring. And I think there's so many practices the world over that can actually learn from that type of approach, because there are a lot of markets out there in the world that have got similarities perhaps to the UK market. And there are certain business practices or practice modalities that you guys would be doing that in other markets are not necessarily happening, but those practices in those markets can greatly learn from you guys because your approach is done differently, and vice versa. There are certain things that you guys are, and I'm sure you guys have always been doing that, where you see things happening in other countries, completely different practice approaches, but where you see an element of what they're doing could be beneficial way more in your guys' community and practice than you would actually under normal circumstances be doing it. So I actually like that approach of separation. It's very, very important. Now, the next generation of eye care leaders, we've got gatekeepers in our industry. Social media has connected the world quicker compared to maybe 15 years ago. I would not have known you. So unfortunately now, optometry, you work until you're 80. People need to drag you out of the examination room to say, please stop working. Let the next generation come in now and do their thing. So what does the future look like for the next generation of eye care leaders? Do they have a space to be able to carve out their own unique value proposition when people who qualified in 1968, 1972, 1978, whatever, are still practicing today?
So I think actually the opposite is more of a problem for us here in the UK, and I don't know where the audience are working, but in the UK, golden age for independent optometry for my dad's generation. So there was no multiples, there was no internet, there was no care. Everything was independent back in those days, and so everybody came out of university and started their own independent practice. Age are 65, 70, that sort of age, and now looking or thinking about retirement. A next generation ready to take on those practices, because a lot of the current gen have moved into franchise and multiples, and so there isn't a huge next generation, and I think we're going to be in a bit of trouble because to retire in the next 10 years, and there isn't a huge number of independent practitioners ready to purchase. And a lot of people just don't want the hard work of it. They want to they can earn a good wage just like testing eyes, and they don't have to worry about it. Like, why and I could be doing my own thing? Well, because I'm a business owner and I'm passionate about it and I love doing it. But not all people think like that. Some people just want to. Maybe we don't have a huge number of people coming through who are willing to do that or want to do that, and that's going to be interesting to see what happens in the UK. Who's going to take them on? But I think if you are minded to do those things and you want a good independent practice, then no problem. People who would bite your hand off to come and be a part of their practice. So all these older guys that you're talking about, they're going to want to sell their practices one day. So get to know one. Can you come and work? I'm looking for an optometrist 2 days a week. If someone wants to come and work in my practice 2 days a week, let me know. I'm looking for somebody. But that's how you make that grows into something else. But you have to make the effort to make that happen. And so we have to see whether there is people actually want that. And I don't know that generation want what I am doing now in life. I don't know. And only they can answer that, really.
Yeah, it's such a difficult one because I look at what I earned as my first salary coming out of university versus the expectations that some of the guys that are coming out of university today are having as salary expectations. And I'm like, wow, it took me years to even get to what you want to earn already coming out of university. So I think the generation that is coming out now, we want things now. We want the rewards now. We want everything to happen now and not necessarily have the patience to build it over time. So it's such a difficult one that I've noticed. And it's not only the UK, here in South Africa, here I found that, and I talk to some people in Australia sometimes, and I find that even in New Zealand, Australia, some of those challenges are existing there as well. But yeah, I guess we'll see. We'll see. What drives you? What drives you? What keeps you sane? What keeps you steadfast? What keeps you on moral high standing ground?
Good question. Good question. Well, I think optometry, like I've grown up in optometry. It's all I ever wanted to do. It's what I studied for. It's what my family did. My life. But it's not the only thing in my life, nor is it the most important thing in my life. I said earlier, I'm a Christian. That is the most important thing in my life. For me, now, the most important thing in my life, that should define who I am. So first and foremost, I'm not an optometrist. First and foremost, there are other things that are more important in my identity than optometry. And they're not just being a Christian, like being a husband to my wife. These things are more important to my identity than my optometry. And so it's a good question to ask yourself, if your or fell apart for some reason, apart from the kind of loss of income, if you take that out of the equation, like what would that do to shipwreck you? Then you're on sketchy ground there, because if you've built your identity around being an optometrist and then for whatever reason maybe can't work as an optometrist anymore, and then you don't know who you are, and like, what am I about if I'm not an optometrist? Who am I? Do I have worth? Do I have value? You've got to other than your work, and even places other than your family and your career and your education and your finances, whatever. And I think that's where it's to be found. But you've got to find it in places other than your work, I think, no matter how important. I think ultimately, my life doesn't revolve around my optometry practice entirely, and it's okay to be able to just let that.
I love that. And you obviously then leading me to the follow-up question to that. To what extent then has faith played a part in your business, especially in difficult periods? Because the reason I'm asking that, we did a lot of optometric practice training, and there was a team of 5 people in a practice, optometrists and the 4 staff members. And I knew them individually as people of faith. I knew that they were strong Christians. They believed in God, and I knew them outside of the optometry world. And then I went to this training and I asked them one time, I said, have you guys ever come together as a team and prayed? And that was, they had this blank stare on their faces, because they were like, but this is a place of work. So I know you to be a person of faith. You're not shy about your openness to your journey of faith. You're proud to be a Christian. So am I. It comes out in the work that I do. How much of that plays a role in your day-to-day business? And does your team get to experience that? Because for me, I feel like Christianity sometimes is challenged on the context of we're not open about it. You are a Christian on Sunday or away from your place of work, but at work, no one knows that you are an active Christian. So how has that influenced your practice, your leadership, the day-to-day operations? I know we didn't plan for this question, but I think it's a masterclass. This is a masterclass.
Yeah, okay. We're off. We've turned left. We're off
but this is a masterclass.
Good, good. I mean, I think I would like to think, because I see that my faith is the kind of identity and personality above every other consideration in my life, then I would like to think that influences every other. My faith influences how I am a husband. It how influences how I father my children. It influences how I run my business, how I treat my business decisions, what I do with my money, what I do with my time. All those things should flow from whatever that central identity is. Now, our Christian faith, that's the thing at the top of our identity. It's different for different people. They may have another faith or no faith, but whatever it is that's at the top, everything else will then flow out of. And so that's why I'm saying I don't want my identity to be as an optometrist. Like, that's not going to, being an optometrist doesn't help.
I like it.
Father or a better friend. Like, so something else has to be at the top of the tree. You can't have optometry at the top of the tree. It's just not good enough. Things properly. So something has to come above that. How does it influence? I guess you'd have to ask my staff. I like to treat them fairly, with kindness, with compassion, with love. We treat them how they would like to be treated. We're generous to them about as employees and that sort of thing. You don't need to be a Christian to do any of those things, but that does influence how I do those. What to do with the business? Do I want to run it in a certain way? I could make decisions that are better for the profitability of the business, but ethically, people, I think, actually, do you know what? This is more important and it's less profitable, but I think this is a better thing to do. And so sometimes we make daft. People are saying, why would you spend so much money on that? Or why would you spend so much money on your staff, or whatever it is? And this than the profit side of things. So, and again, you don't need to be a Christian to do any of those things, but having some guiding principles is definitely helpful. Between two good things. How do you decide between two possible avenues? If you don't have a mechanism for that, then it can be very difficult to know if you're doing the right thing. So,
wow.
As it should. I think that's the nature of faith. It should be the central feature of your life.
Wow, I love that. I love that. I love that. And this has been a very lovely conversation. I'm being blown away by this masterclass series. And just when I think that the one that I've just done, it's like the best masterclass ever. The very next one, because leaders are so different, and these masterclasses are just so different. Each and every one of them are just so different. And today, thank you so much for your honesty. Thank you so much for just showing us your heart in answering these questions, because the people are going to be learning from these things. The people are going to be enjoying these conversations and taking back the information, the pearls of wisdom, and implementing them back in their lives, beyond their practices, in their lives. Because at the end of the day, we've got purpose. As much as we spend so much time in optometry, but we are here to make the world a better place. We are here to influence people. We are here to make such a huge difference to society. When that person, I'm a firm believer, when that person comes in and sits in front of me, I'm not giving them a pair of glasses. I'm changing the way they see life, the way they see the world. And so we play such an important and critical role as IK leaders. And what you have shared in terms of faith, in terms of leadership approach, in terms of the basics of just being a good human being, came out so strong in this masterclass series. And so I'm so grateful for you to unveil your time today. Super, super, super grateful. Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, good question. I'm not really big on social media personally. So, I mean, I am. You can find me on Facebook. I am on there, but I never really post anything. But there, Ian Cameron at the bottom of the screen. You can connect through our website. It's probably the easiest thing. So, CameronOptom.com. That's our Facebook for the practice. We've got stuff like that. So you can find us on social about the practice, not about me personally. If people do want to reach out to me directly, speak to UOB, and I'd be very happy to pass on my email. Email's good, WhatsApp's good, like, I'm very happy.
No,
have got questions or they want to ask me something, then I'd love to engage with your audience. So just feel free to speak to Obi. I'd be really happy to speak to anybody anytime about eyes or anything else. But real pleasure being here. Thank you for having me, and thank you for a very. Now, I never get asked those questions in interviews. That's the first time anyone has ever asked me those questions. So good man, good man.
Thank you very much, everyone. That was yet another great episode of the Vision Straight Masterclass series. If you're not subscribed to the Vision Straight YouTube channel, do so right now. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and of course, LinkedIn. And do connect with us on our website so that you can see all the wonderful work that we are doing that helps you elevate your practice to the next level. Until the next episode, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much for tuning in. And we can't wait for you to just tune into the next episode. Take care, everyone.
Bye.